people's training, how much time do people actually pay attention to improving their pace? When they're working on the putting, you'll see a lot of time, a lot of attention trying to get the stroke right, but spend a little bit more time engaging and giving your brain tasks to improve pace control. Go onto the putting green with 4 balls and see if you can complete this task from 10, 15, 20 feet. With the first ball, see if you can roll it just past the hole. With the second ball, see if you can leave it to the right of the hole. Third ball, leave it to the left of the hole. And the fourth ball, leave it short of the hole. You're engaging the brain to actually increase feel, this elusive thing called feel. You're training it in a way by not just trying to get it right all the time, but moving either side of correct. It's a wonderful, wonderful exercise.
Hi, this is Ed Patterson from Rockport, Texas. I play Rockport Country Club, and this is episode 906 of Golf Smarter.
Golf's a game to be enjoyed, not endured, with both Gary Nicol and Karl Morris.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Gary.
Great to see you again, Fred. Thanks for having us back on. Been a while.
Yeah. Yes, it has. And what's interesting is you said us, because I've never had the two of you on together. You guys have been partners in crime in the golf world for a long time, but I've had you on separately. So I'm very excited to get you both on together. And so I also want to say welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Karl.
It's good to be back, Fred. I'm excited about this. You're looking better than ever.
Oh, well, thank you.
I know. What's your secret?
Podcasting. Try to keep my face off of it. Just try to be a podcaster, the face for radio type of thing. Feeling good though, because I'm learning a lot, and I just am amazed this is the 18th year of my podcast. And what amazes me is these things that get repeated over and over, and I hear them again and again. But as I get deeper and deeper into this, the nuances of what is being said just kind of steps out and becomes more apparent. It's like, oh, that's what you meant this whole time. But I'm excited because I'm on this quest to try to lower the amount of putts per round that I'm having. I'd love to be in the sub 30 range. We'd all love to be in the sub 30 range, but if I can be 30 to 32 per round, 30 to 33, I feel very good about my score. It's the 34 and up that still rears its ugly head that I've got to get rid of. So That's what I want to get you guys here. It's important. Karl, you've got, are you both doing podcasts? Are you doing the podcast together, or Karl, is this your show?
No, I'm just a guest. I think when Karl stopped for a guest, he asked me.
Yeah. Gary's my go-to man when everybody else turns me down. So
it happens.
He's been on a good few times, but I'm well behind you, Fred. I think I've done about 300 episodes, something like that. But well behind the number that you've managed to get to. But as you know, it's a fair old commitment every single week, isn't it? It's you gotta hang in there and stay with it.
You really do. It is a commitment, but because I approach this as a student and wanting to learn as much as I can, it's a lot easier for me than, if I was a PGA professional, then I can have these colleagues that I can call in and probably get bigger names, but I love the names that I'm getting. So I think I've created some credibility here. I'm very curious though, how did you guys get together to be working partners on putting and in golf? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one, and Gary can follow. See if the stories are somewhat similar. No, I mean we knew each other because we've both been out working on the European tour and PGA tours for a long time. Gary longer than me, and he'd been out there week in, week out, and I used to sort of just come in and out a few times a year. So we'd known each other from that working with tour players. But it was actually a guy called Mike Malone, who's one of the top men in TrackMan systems over in the UK, who actually got us together. We had a conversation, and we decided to do a seminar together up at Archerfield, where Gary's based, which is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Or anybody listening, if there's somewhere to put on your bucket list, it should be Archerfield. But anyway, we got together and we did a seminar up there, and then we started talking about putting, and we did a few putting clinics. And I think we just having a conversation one night, Gary, when we were over maybe a couple of pints in the Gullen clubhouse, and said there must be a book in this, and we kind of thought we'll put a book together, just really to organise our own ideas as much as anything else. And we came up with these 6 principles. Wrote the book fairly quickly, and we enjoyed that process. It gave us something to do one winter. Published it. We published it 5 years ago now at the Scottish Open. Paul Lawrie was kind enough, the British Open champion, was kind enough to do a forward for us. Wow. And we launched it at the Scottish Open. And and that led to 2 more in the Lost Art series. So it's been a very, very interesting journey.
That's pretty much my recollection of how it went as well.
That's a relief. I got it right.
Okay. We'll let it go at that. Well, I'm so glad you guys found each other. Say again, Gary?
Yeah. No, it's been good fun.
Yeah. Well, so The Lost Art of Putting is a book that's been out for a number of years now, but it's now got a new life to it. Karl, you want to explain what's going on? Yeah,
we thought a number of people who'd given us really nice feedback from reading the book, but a number of people said to us it would be really lovely if we could see some visuals, maybe some drills that we can work on, and some ideas how to practice some of the things from the Lost Art. And we kind of thought it would be really nice to just put the visual element to it. So that's where we've now got the new program, where it's an in-depth version of the book itself. But I think for a lot of people watching it, it'll kind of come to life, the ideas and concepts, which for perhaps some people can seem a little bit dry when they just read a book. We've hopefully brought them alive, and we filmed it at Archerfield, so the location was stunning, and we really feel that it's a contribution for people to explore an area of putting that I think is maybe undervalued these days. That there's so much technology, Fred. There's so much science, which we're not Luddites. We definitely believe that has its part to play. But I think for everybody who can think back to the times that they've gone out on the golf course and they've holed putts and they've putted well, I've never heard anybody say that I putted really well because I was thinking about a lot of things, or I've never putted really well because I was so into my mechanics and things like that. That usually when people talk about good putting days, it's usually related to an absence of thought, an increase in feel, a little bit more artistry. And as much as anything, and hopefully Gary would agree, we actually want to put a little bit of fun back into putting, because a number of times I'll go to a tour event now and again, and Gary will say, "What's it like out there?" And I sort of shake my head and say, "It's still the same old story." And we call it the torture chamber, where we see people on the putting green Tuesday and Wednesday with all sorts of sort of gadgets and gizmos and things like that, and it looks akin to literally torturing themselves. And you know, I know people get something from it, and some people improve as a result of it. But for us, it just feels like in some ways that scientific element to it is deadening the artistry. And I think there's just a whole world that you can explore on the other side of the science, which is the art of putting.
Could not agree more. I was at the Scottish Open week before last and witnessed exactly the same thing in the putting green. You know, you're tripping over strings and gadgets and eye line mirrors and all sorts of things, and it does, for me, it dumbs down the artistry and the feel, you know, and the fun element. It becomes a chore. You know, playing golf should not be a chore at any level, whether you're playing for your living or playing with your friends on a Saturday or Sunday morning or a Wednesday afternoon. It's a game. it's my late father said this to me many, many years ago, and it's obviously stuck with me because I'm still talking about it decades later. Golf's a game to be enjoyed, not endured. But I think just see so many people, for people who invest so much time and money in the game, we don't see an awful lot of teeth. We don't see an awful lot of people smiling, which is such a tragedy, really. So as Karl suggested, we want to bring a bit of the fun element back into putting, and not putting, but golf across the board. And I think if that involves a bit more artistry and creativity, I think that's probably not a bad way to go forwards with it.
I hope you don't mind, Gary, that I will now forever be quoting your father, but I'll give you credit for it about golf as a game to be enjoyed, not endured. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, wise words, weren't they?
Amazing words. Powerful words. Powerful words. All right, we're going to take a time out. We'll be back right after this. What I so enjoy about watching the video, and I've watched it a couple of times now on the Lost Art of Putting, is how you guys complement one another on the mechanic side and the mental side of it. And I'm going to go right, Karl. You go to a lot of places, but I have to say, after watching it a couple times and then going out to the golf course this week, what I kept hearing in my head was about the alpha wave and the beta wave and the busy beta wave and the very smooth alpha wave. I played this weekend we shouldn't have gone out. It was over 95 degrees outside. It was very hot. I walked the front nine and got joined a partner being in the cart, and it kills me to do so, but I got in the cart on the back nine and rode with him. But for only the second time in my playing career of 25 plus years, I shot even par on the back nine. And I think it was more about the fact that I was so hot and it was draining me so much. And I was hydrating nonstop, but I wasn't thinking about it. I was totally distracted by the heat, and I was just going up, taking the shot, and then moving on and not getting concerned over everything. My mind was moving very slowly. And then again, I watched the video and like, oh, the alpha waves were really in play. And I shot a 76, which for me is an excellent, excellent round. My goal is always to, when I look over my last 20 scores in the index settings, is to try to have more rounds in the 70s than in the 90s. And so right now I'm there. I haven't had a round in the 90s in a while, so I'm very happy about that. But it's because of what I learned from guys like you.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say that, Fred, and also great to hear that your game's moving in a good direction. I think it's fantastic that you managed to have all these different people on the podcast, which is great information for you. But you then managed to distill it down to things that are relevant for you and in your own individual golf, and I think that's important for everybody listening. That you can hear great information and great ideas, but ultimately you've got to own these things for yourself, and you've got to find out what it is that makes you tick as a unique human being. So, we can talk in general terms, but the individual is sacred. But what you're saying there about your experience with putting, you think about it with this game. Most people, as a generalized statement, would say that they actually putted better when they were kids, when they were younger, than they actually do now. Even top professionals would often relate that story about how easy putting was when they were younger players. And you think, well, why is that? Well, as a kid, you walk onto a green and you're just absorbed with what the golf ball has got to do. You're really interested in what this ball needs to do to go into the hole. And as simple as that sounds, I think what happens is, in our evolution as a golfer, what happens, we go from being interested in what the golf ball has to do to becoming more obsessed in what we have to do. And by that I mean is what we have to do mechanically. How do we have to move our body to actually move the ball in a certain direction at a certain pace? And, we posed the question in the lost art of golf. Does the shot create the swing, or does the swing create the shot? And it's the same, we believe. Does the putt create the stroke, or does the stroke create the putt? Now, you'll get 100 pros who would argue vociferously one way or the other, and there's no definitive answer to this. But we really firmly believe if you've got a really good idea what you believe the golf ball needs to do to go into the hole, trust your body to organize the movement to make that happen without you getting too involved in it. We need to leave Fred out of it, or Gary out of it, or Karl out of it, where we get so involved in trying to be perfect, and actually realize that when we get clear on that, we get clear on our intention, some amazing things can happen. We have a fundamental principle, Fred, that your body will organize movement around a clear intention. But most people, when they go onto a green, have a very cloudy intention. And usually the intention is more to do with how they're going to move rather than what they want the ball to do.
Excellent. It's interesting. This kind of works to go back and forth that.
I did a clinic for a group of kids from the Congaree Foundation today, and they're all really good players, 16, 17 years old, low handicap golfers. And we talked about basically the principles within the Lost Art of Putting, the book, and within the digital program. And one of the concepts we talked about in a bit of depth is visualization. And there were 9 kids, and not one of them was seeing the ball going into the hole before they hit it, which was quite astonishing.
Yeah.
They could not visualize. One did, I think one did, but the others were saying, well, no, I pick my line, and then I get over the ball, and I do this with my stroke, and I do this with the putter and my shoulders. I said, what about the ball? But I got to get it started online. Yeah, that's part of the process, but how about you get it finishing? Think about the finish line rather than the start line. What do you mean? Well, the ball going into the hole. Well, not really. I see where it starts. I see where I want to hit it to a certain point, whatever. I said, yeah, but the movie doesn't end there. The movie ends with the ball going into the hole. We tend to create what we see. So I said, okay, if I give you all a piece of paper and a pen, a marker pen, a Sharpie, whatever, and ask you to draw a circle, a square, and a triangle, what do you see? A circle, a square, and a triangle. So you can't draw a circle when you're thinking about a triangle. You can't draw a square when you're thinking about a fish. For example, you've got to think about what you want that intention to be. And surely the intention when you're putting is to get the ball to go into the hole. So we went through all the questions. First of all, is it possible this ball could go in the hole? Well, I didn't hold the last one. Okay, I wasn't asking about the last putt. Let's get thinking about paying attention to this putt. Is it possible this ball could go in the hole? Yes, absolutely. Of course it's possible. Okay, so what does the ball have to do? Well, it needs to travel on a certain line at the appropriate pace. Or if you flip that on its head, because that's what most people do, they choose a line, then they decide how hard to hit it. But if pace determines line, surely we should be paying a bit more attention to the pace first, and then choose it. Once you've decided how hard you're going to hit it, then you choose a line appropriate to that pace. And pace, well, line is nothing without pace. And I saw a few kind of stunned faces, but then we went out the putting green and we focused entirely on pace and visualization. And all I could hear, I didn't intervene with any technical information or intervention. And I just heard balls going in, falling into the hole, and laughter, and, could see smiling faces and kids having fun. How about that for a concept? And it was great.
Outrageous.
They loved it. Yeah, I know, fun. Shouldn't be. But going back to a lot of players that we've worked with over the years, their skills have diminished in their quest to become better, perfect, technically more efficient, whatever, but they've lost the basic skill of getting the ball into the hole because their attention is not on that. Their attention's on their knees or their hips or their elbows or their shoulders or their left nostril or their right earlobe, whatever it is. But their attention's been drawn away from the task, which is to get the ball into the hole. And as Karl said, once you have that very clear intention and you're paying attention to what the ball has to do, your brain will start to open up neural pathways sending very clear signals to the parts of your body that are attached to and move the putter in the appropriate manner. And guess what? You start to hole some putts.
You know, you could, for everybody listening, Fred, you could have just a really simple game that you could go out and try it the next time you go onto the putting green. And this sounds so ridiculously simple, but we've found it can be revolutionary for a lot of players. Is just to simply go out and hit a bunch of putts from, say, 5-6 feet up to 20 feet. A lot of individual putts all around the green, and just ask yourself one question before you hit the putt. You just say to yourself, which side of the hole is this ball going to go in? And then you actually answer that question. It's either going in from the left side of the hole or the right side of the hole on most putts from 6 foot and beyond. And then once you've answered that question, it's going to go in from the right, it's going to go in from the left. Allow your brain to create an image backwards from the entry point from the hole back to you. You know, be a little bit creative. Maybe you want to put some color in there. You know, you see that the line from the hole, from the entry point into the hole, comes back to you, and the color's green or red or yellow or blue or whatever it is. Knock yourself out with the color that you do, but just really engage that creative part of your brain with that simplicity, and then just see what happens. Just hit a bunch of putts, single ball from lots of different locations, and see what you like in terms of your prediction. Did it go in from the right? Did it come in from the left? Because I think, again, one of the things that people don't realize, that if you look at it, what is the fundamental requirement to become a good putter is you basically have to predict what a golf ball is going to do based on one attempt. You only get one go, as far as I know, out on the golf course. So if prediction is a really important skill to develop, I'd ask everybody listening, how much are you practicing your prediction skills? Now, that is very different than standing in the same place, hitting the same putt over and over and over again, drilling into you the idea that if you see the ball going enough times from the same place, you'll magically take that ability out onto the golf course with you. Now, I know that has got a part to play. We know that some mechanics and understanding face control and path and all those things have a part to play. But once you get out onto the golf course, you better be good at predicting based on one attempt. So if you're not, practice some of your prediction skills.
Yeah, exactly. I was explaining to these kids today that you have to hit the same putt from the same place on the golf course 3 or 4 or 5 times. You're in serious trouble. I don't know how you would do that. So if you've got to hit the same putt again, it's because you've all hit it out of bounds, which is going to be pretty rare in the putting green, I would imagine. So, what people tend to take balls out and hit the first one 3 feet past. So they react to that and they leave the next one short. Then because they and everyone else who plays golf is a genius, by the time you get to the third attempt, we've managed to hold the third one. But we've recalibrated, we've learned from the first one and the second one. That's not predicting. That's reacting to and learning from. We do not have that luxury on the golf course.
No, we don't. All right, we're going to take another time out, and we'll be back to continue this conversation with Gary Nicol and Karl Morris right after this. Okay, I need to ask a quick question about the visualization, Gary, especially those young people that you were working in. Pin in or pin out make a difference as far as visualization? Because with pin in, then you have something that is more than just the flat ground that you're looking at. It's got a hard target that you can go to.
That's a great question. I've read about 4 very in-depth surveys and studies on whether you should have the pin in or the pin out. 2 conclusively say you must keep the pin in, and guess what the other 2 say?
Out.
I still don't know. But I think from a visualization perspective, having the pin in on longer putts certainly draws your attention to where the hole is, which is never a bad thing because that's ultimately where you want your ball to go, or where you want your ball to finish. And I think that kind of gives you a destination. And it's like a beacon signaling or drawing you into that end goal, that destination. So it can be, I mean, we're not absolutists. We would never say you must use the pin as a visualization tool or you must take it out and not use it. Experiment with one, experiment with the other, and see which works best for you. But I think the journey to the pin is quite important. You know, Karl mentioned the line earlier, and we've experimented with a number of players over the last few years with the concept of a much thicker line rather than, you know, most people who use a line on their ball, they tend to see it an extension of that very thin line that's on your ball. So they're trying to put down a razor blade or a tightrope, if you like. But if you think about trying to put down the channels we talk about in the video and in the book, the digital program, we try to get you to think about a 3-ball channel or a 3-ball highway that's going to lead you to your ultimate destination. And the perception of difficulty decreases massively when you've got a channel to hit down rather than trying to hit down this very thin line, because by definition, if you're trying to hit or put your ball down a very thin line, then you're going to tense up. You're going to get a bit tight. You're probably not breathing. Your brain's going to start racing. All your attention is then going to focus back on you and what you have to do and what the putter has to do at the expense of what the ball has to do, which was our original intention, I should say. So having that change of intention changes where you focus your attention. So having that thicker channel, and as Karl said, get creative with the color. The number of people I've asked who said, "Oh, I see a green line." Okay, just think about that for a second. You want something that's going to contrast, not blend in. So, you know, the brighter the color, the better the results tend to be. And I often ask players, when you do see that line, where does it end? Well, it starts at the ball and it finishes right at the edge of the hole. Okay, so basically, what your brain is picking up is, I want to putt to the edge of the hole.
Yeah.
Very few people will have the reach the entry point. Something as simple as that can make all the difference. You know, sometimes I'll put a tee in the, let's say we've got a left to right breaking putt. And if the center of the hole is 6 o'clock on a clock face and you want the ball to enter at 8 p.m. So if you put a tee in the ground at 8 p.m. beside the front of the hole, you ask the player, does that look like an easy task or a difficult task? 9 times out of 10, they'll say it's a difficult task. Wow, that's a really small entry point. But if we move the tees to the back of the hole, so that it's thought you've got to get it in somewhere between, I don't know, 10 and 2, all of a sudden that target looks so much bigger and it's dragging you putt to the back of the hole, not to the front of the hole. You know, if you hit a putt from 10 feet and it stops it in short, it's going to stay there. But if you aim for the back of the hole and it comes up and in short, yeah, but if you aim for the back of the hole and it comes up and in short, well, the hole's 4.25 inches in every direction, so it's got a much, much better chance of going in the hole that way.
Right. 100% of putts that are short don't go in, right? It's pretty simple.
At 99%, I don't know what happens.
The other thing that you can do as well, as we're getting onto the imagery, again, is just being playful with it. You know, we've had some players who they'll create, let's say they'll create a red channel, a red line going into the hole, but then get even more creative where they actually see that there's liquid flowing down that red channel. It's like a mercury going into the hole or whatever it is, a lava flowing into the hole. And it just seems that the richer that the images are, of what the task is, the more engaged that we are in that putt, the more that seems to supply the information from the brain then to the body to actually get the job done. And it's a kind of non-technical, non-linear way of doing it. It's engaging, if you want, the right side of the brain, the creative side of the brain, which then seems to help the feel element to it, because you're not verbalizing, you're not telling yourself to do something. You're really tuned into the images and allowing then the feel to take over and respond to those images.
Tiger always said he played in putting pictures. So what does that tell you? He was seeing before he was doing, but he was seeing what the ball was doing. He always reacted to what he wanted the ball to do, which seems like the simplest, smartest way to play the game. That's real golf smarter. Weren't many smarter than Tiger. Of course, that's for sure.
Do you really think that he was probably, and I say was, it's a shame, but we're saying was about Tiger now, but one of the most intelligent golfers as far as his golf IQ? I mean, we've talked about in the States here in basketball, if a guy has a high basketball IQ, Tiger's golf IQ, it was just off the charts compared to everybody else.
100%. Yeah, could not agree more. I can't think of many golfers with a higher golf IQ. That's for sure. He knew what he was doing every step of the way. But a lot of it came from his early training. Karl, you know a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly his background with his mother, with the sort of Buddhist training, things like that, his mindfulness, the aspect mindfulness practice that I know he did, or I believe he did, and the work that he did with Jay Brunzer, who was a Navy psychologist, who was a friend of Earlwood's, I believe. I mean, I don't know what they did, but I'm pretty sure they must have played around with a lot of imagery and creativity. But when you just said there, Fred, about golfing IQ, if we drill into that a little bit, what is golfing IQ? What does that actually mean, and how relevant is it for everybody listening? Well, to me, golfing IQ is where you become very attuned to the golf course, where you're very attuned to the puzzle that the golf course is setting for you. Because we'll say, throughout the game, that the golf course is speaking to you all the time. It's telling you what to do, but you've got to listen to it. And most people are not listening to the golf course. They're so wrapped up in the minutiae of what they're trying to do with the mechanics that they actually don't tune into the subtleties of the golf course, the subtleties of the wind, the change of direction, temperature, all those kind of things. That I think that the more you become involved in what the golf ball needs to do, and the shots that you're trying to create, the chips that you're trying to create, the putts that you're trying to create, you become much more attuned to the golf course. One of the things that we recommend a lot of players do is actually go out on the golf course, even the course that you know really well, and actually walk. There's something Jack Nicklaus did. Actually walk the golf course backwards. Start at the 18th green. Look at the perspective from the 18th green, and it'll seem a lot wider than it does when you play it the normal way around. But walk it backwards and then turn around. And the number of players I worked with over the years who I can look back on it where we've actually walked practice rounds because they've not had enough time to play enough practice rounds. And when you walk a practice round, you actually engage that creative side of them, and you start to see the shots that you could play. You start to engage the visualization skills, and it's just a fun extra dimension that you could add that virtually nobody thinks about. Engaging this creative aspect.
I've had an issue for years where I've said that the USGA was an advocate for the golf course and not the golfer. And it's going to be hard to grow the game if you don't give the golfer more consideration. But as we're recording this, yesterday was the finish of the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool, won by Brian Harman. And I think that it was a really good example of, you talked about the golf IQ and understanding what a golf course can do to the players. I thought that this past weekend was a great example of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the golf course was asking question after question after question, and Brian Harman came up with the best answers.
And
Essentially,
his putting was remarkable. What, 38 out of 39 or 58 out of 59 at under 10 feet?
under 10 feet. Now, they weren't all 10 feet. Some might have been 3, 4, and 5.
Sure, but they were under.
That's incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah, he held 450 feet of putts all week. That's a lot of putts. If you hold more than 100 feet of putts in a round, you're having a pretty special day. 450. I think he led the putting stats, or certainly some of the putting stats. Yeah, he played very sensible golf. Some would say almost to the point of being boring. But if hitting most fairways and most greens is boring golf, then I'll have some of that, please. And if choosing 3 putts is boring, again, I'll have some of that, please. Yeah, he just understood. I think everyone understood what the task was and what the questions were being asked of the players by the golf course or the golf course designer. But he had the answers. He passed the examination with flying colors.
All right, more on him. I have another question about Brian, but we're going to take another time out, and I'll do that right after this. Congratulations again, Brian Harman. That was a remarkable feat. But I have to say, if I was playing golf with Brian Harman, as great as he hits the ball, as great as his putting is, I would go out of my mind with the waggles. It was like I would just want to yell, "Hit the ball, please!" What's going on there, and is it necessary, and why is he doing that?
Well, I think what every golfer's waiting for, Fred, is what I call the go signal, where you get over the ball and your brain sort of says, "Yeah, we're ready. We're ready to go here." And clearly for Brian, a couple of waggles should, in effect, give him the go signal. I'm not a big fan of overdoing that because I think 2 waggles can turn into 3, 4, and 5. And it was interesting on the back 9 that the waggles seem to increase a little bit. So ultimately, I think what is relevant for everybody listening. I talk a lot about with players about the idea of flow, about the whole routine should actually flow. It's like a dance almost. As you go from behind the ball, you create the shot, the practice swings that you take, the movement that you make into the shot. It should. I don't like to see really staccato movements where it's very rigid and you're trying to get everything absolutely perfect. You'll find that if you allow yourself to just select the shot, create the shot, and then flow through the rest of the routine, if the routine flows, then what a surprise, the golf swing tends to flow. So I think, just the very concept of allowing flow into the process and not trying to be perfect with it, not trying to be so precise. I think, for me, we talked about the 3-ball highway with putting. You could actually enlarge that with the rest of the game. We've been told for many years that it's all about picking the smallest possible target, the leaf on the tree idea and things like that. Now, I would say if anybody picks really small targets and they play really well, guess what? They should continue doing it. But an alternative view is, instead of picking really small targets, is that you actually play around with channels. And not, just as we said on the green, that you can see a channel working into the hole. One of the players that I've worked with for a long time, who had a decent open, Laurie Cantor. He finished in the top 20, and we've talked a lot with Laurie over the last few years about seeing shots working down channels, because he feels actually when he picks small targets, he actually feels it really restricts him because he feels it's too precise. He can feel as though he gets into a have to be perfect mode. Whereas if he can really see a really nice wide channel, then he lets go. He actually led the driving statistics for the week there. And that would be something, again, for everybody listening, play around with that. Go onto the range and, use alignment sticks for what we believe they should be used for. Is not so much being down by your feet, but actually stand out onto the range, go out a few feet in front of you, and play around with what you need to have as a width of channel. Now, some people might find a fairly narrow channel works well for them. Other people, depending on their ability, a little bit wider channel. But it's a great feeling to stand there on the range and think, I just can't miss this channel, and you're just going to let it go down that channel channel element. So again, it's just changing your perception of the difficulty of the task.
And part of the video that I absolutely loved was the idea of looking at the hole and picking the back side of it and widening the channel. That really helped me a lot this weekend. Also, I have found, and this is, I don't know, we're talking about the smallest possible target, that once I have determined my pace and then determine the line, is picking a spot, a very small spot, about 6 to 8 to maybe 10 inches in front of the ball, and making sure that the ball rolls over that spot, as opposed to picking a line where I want the apex to be and then what the break is going to be. Is just if I can get the ball on that spot and work it from there, I was having much greater success, especially with long putts. But with short putts, which is my kryptonite, the inside of 4 feet, that just like shouldn't be a problem, that I tend to miss more of those than I want to. I think we all do. But I started not focusing on the hole. I started focusing on a spot, making sure I just get to the line over that spot, and get it started properly. And it made a big difference.
Whatever works. If that
okay
works for you, that's what works for you. Again, we are not absolutists. We're not saying you must do it this way, you must do it that way. These are some concepts. Take them away, personalize them, make them your own. And explore with this, explore with that, explore with the next thing, and see what works best for you. Because golf is such an individual and personal game, and the putting aspect of it. If you pick out the 10 best putters statistically in the world, the one thing that they will have in common is they all do it their own way.
Yeah.
It's all about they may have different styles or different grips or stances or putters, or some might have a toe hang, some might have more of a mallet, some have a little bit blade. It doesn't really matter. It's about finding out what works best for you. And once you've got that magic formula, the one thing I would suggest you do, we would both suggest you do, is please write it down. Because we always think we're going to remember these things, and we rarely do. So we're very big into the power of journaling and writing these things down. I always ask my students, did you write that down when you played really well? Well, yeah, I was good, but I'll remember what I was doing. Really? Have you ever forgotten a significant other's birthday or anniversary? Or we all have, right? So if that's really important to us and we forget that, what are the chances of remembering what we did when we played well 3 Sundays ago? Pretty slim. So yeah, get a nice notebook, get a nicer pen, and make sure you write down all your learnings, all these great things that you've managed to learn and apply to your golf game.
Because one of the things that people say, Fred, is that the problem is with golf is that it's not a reactionary sport like baseball or basketball is. But in a way, not in a way, golf is a reactionary sport. Is that you will react to the images inside of your head that you have before you actually hit the shot. So what happens with the stroke, what happens with the swing, is after the horse has bolted. Let's come back a little bit and let's find out what images that you have, what is your attention on before you actually play the shot, before you actually hit the putt. And as you described, you've come up with some things, some images that you can work with, rolling over that spot down the channel. You've come up with something that your body responds to in terms of imagery before you actually hit the putt. So I think that would be our overall message for everybody: is understand that you will be thinking something before every shot and every putt. You will have something going through your head. Fundamental principle is what you're thinking. Is it useful or useless? because the results that you get in will tell you which of those two categories you tend to focus on. So it's about, and that's why Gary said writing these things down is so important. You need to unlock your code. You need to understand your golfing DNA of the things that work for you. You know, success leaves a trail behind, but we don't often look for it. But explore the imagery, explore the things that you do before you actually pull the trigger.
But what's crazy about golf is what may work for you today. You know, like you said, if it works, keep doing it. In 3 or 4 rounds, it may not be working again. It may not be working anymore. I mean, nothing is perfect and nothing is forever. It feels like
It's an ever evolving. It's a living thing, isn't it? It's a living organism, isn't it? So, but we tend to find that these things stop working when you stop doing them.
Mm.
So, you know, you really focus on something for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you think, okay, I've got that, and your attention will wander somewhere else. Not consciously, you won't make a conscious effort to stop doing it, but you think subconsciously, okay, I've cracked that. That I know that works, but I wonder what would happen if I just added this or added that. So, you know, when you create your favorite meal, it's your favorite meal because you use the same ingredients and you cook it the same way. Once you start messing about with cooking times and adding more and more ingredients, it's not going to taste the same. The outcome will not be the same. So it's finding your magic formula. Now, yes, the brain likes to reset. So sometimes we get a little bit bored with doing the same thing time and time again. So you might have to go away and try something else. But if you've written down what's worked in the past, you've always got that to go back to. Now, it might mean that sometimes you do have to go and try something for a day or 2 or a week to discover that what you were doing in the first place was actually the best version or brought out the best version of you. But if you don't have that written down as a reference point, you've got nothing to go or nowhere to go back to.
Wow. Well, usually this is where we'll break it off, but I need another segment if you guys have the time. So I will take another break, find out what's happening in Golf Smarter Mulligans, and then we'll be right back. Clearly, you're a podcast listener, and thank you again for being a Golf Smarter listener as well. So here's the deal with Golf Smarter Mulligans. Golf instruction and game improvement insights don't get stale, like PGA Tour news does. By the time you listen to a podcast on Tuesday, last week's tour event is old news. Now, we've discovered over our many years of creating new, informative, evergreen content that our episodes stand up really well and are as helpful as the day they were originally published. But all the podcast distributors like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and Google only allow a podcast to have 250 to 300 episodes available to the public, which is why we launched Mulligans, so that you can have access to the old episodes that are no longer available, but still valuable. So this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, we continue our conversation with Jeff Mangum of theputtingzone.com. This is an hour-long episode that talks about putting, putters, putting insights, putting drills, and more putting.
If you want the predictable ability to deliver your ball into that nice little safety patch behind the hole, you have to be able to have touch. All right, now here's how touch works. If you have the intentionality and you're wide awake and accepting to the reality of those factors that matter, distance, green speed, and uphill, downhill, the normal human non-conscious brain is trained to know how hard to hit that putt. And all you have to do is you use a standard, same all the time tempo and rhythm. A rhythm is 2 tempos, the backstroke tempo, the forward stroke tempo. And once you size a backstroke in the tempo, you have already determined the impact that swing will have at the bottom of the swing.
That's Golf Smarter Mulligans, episode 222, featuring Jeff Mangum of theputtingzone.com. And here's the cool part. This was a members-only episode. For our paid subscribers, which we ended after 7 years in 2016. So chances are pretty good that you've never heard this episode before. Yeah, Golf Smarter publishes 2 golf podcasts every week to help you become a better, smarter golfer. Please follow both of our golf podcasts for free. Golf Smarter, published every Tuesday, and our sister podcast that revisits the best of the Golf Smarter podcasts that are no longer available. It's called Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released every Friday from wherever you're listening right now. Getting back to the waggle for just a moment, it's interesting because I think about Lynn Marriott and Pia Nilsson, who talk about the thinking box and the hitting box, or the thought box and the shot box. And all that waggle stuff, all that getting ready, all that should be done before you step up to the ball. At least I firmly believe what they profess on that and have incorporated it. So once I feel comfortable with what my mechanics need to be and where my target needs to be and what my line needs to be, then I'll just step up to the ball and hit it. And the waggling, it's like, get on with it. It really drove me crazy to watch him do that.
Yeah, but who are we to say that's wrong? He's the Open champion. We're not.
Yeah.
It worked for him, but I can't imagine that would work forever, because it's almost like he's delaying the inevitable. He's trying to, as Karl said, he's not quite ready to hit the press the go button just yet. So it was interesting, certainly in the commentary in the UK, a couple of the commentators mentioned that it would be interesting to see if the frequency and volume of waggles increased as the pressure intensified. And that certainly seemed, I wasn't actually counting them.
I was.
But it certainly appeared going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And perhaps he needed to do that to just get himself ready to go, to calm himself down, perhaps. Who knows? We don't know. All we can see is what we see. We don't know what's going on in his head. So until we know what's going on in his head, all we could do is make an observation of what we see. And we might get it right, but we might get it wrong. So it's very, I'm sure there'll be a lot of experts who'll be jumping on the bandwagon saying, well, you've got to do this, or you've got to do that, or you shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing that. We don't know why he was doing it. We can only make assumptions that he wasn't quite ready to hit play, if you like. So he hit another waggle, and I don't think it was a conscious thing, I'm sure. He just didn't appear to be quite ready to pull the trigger. But, as I say, he's sitting at home with a claret jug right now, and we're talking about him, so he must have been doing something, right?
Right. And, we probably all sat there Sunday morning going, yeah, there's no way he can hold up with this. But then again, he did it, right? Maybe he needed the waggles. Maybe it helped him calm down, and he hung tough. He grinded through
One thing I would pretty much I don't know what he was thinking, but I would be pretty certain, Fred, that what looks physically quite uncomfortable with all the waggles, for him in that moment when he was playing was mentally quite calming. That his mind would not have been jumping around all over the place, even though for us, watching his waggles, it seemed like an eternity at times. But, for him, he would have just been, his mind would have been settled in one place. Now, as we said earlier on, it's not something I would recommend people do, because usually 2 waggles turns into 3, turns into 4, and then you could have a situation like Sergio had a number of years ago when he couldn't take the club away at all, could he? Because he had so many waggles. But I know one of your previous guests, Jim Waldron, he was on my podcast recently, and it reinforced to me. He talks a lot about focus points and the idea of keeping your attention in one place for the duration of the golf swing. And I would reinforce that. That's the holy grail, really, is finding a place that you can keep your attention stable for the time that you swing that golf club.
Right. And what the biokinesiologists are telling us is that focus should not be on your mechanics. It should be on something external. Although Jim will have variations of that, but focusing on a target, a spot, something like that. I do want to ask questions based on the video. Now, the idea that pace determines the line, okay?
Yes.
How is pace determined? How do you know what the pace is? Is that on how the ball drops in the front, middle, or back of the hole? Is that a body thing? How do you determine what the pace is?
You got to figure that out from green reading the green. Most people talk about green reading as a line thing. But what we try to encourage people to do is have a look at the putt from a certain aspect. We talk about low side reading. So you would never hit a shot on the golf course if you didn't know how far you had. You know, everyone's got a rangefinder, a laser, a yardage book, whatever it is. So you would never hit a shot into a green unless you knew how far you had. But we all hit putts not knowing how far we have. So what we're trying to do is establish how long the putt is. Is it uphill? Is it downhill? Is it left to right? So slopes, speed of green, and length of putt are going to be the things that will influence the pace. So once we've kind of figured out if it's uphill, and we've done a bit of practice on the putting green before we go out, a bit of training to find out how the greens are running, hopefully they'll be the same pace as the ones on the golf course. You've then got to figure out, again, going back to Karl's earlier concept of prediction. You've got to predict. I don't think it's more of an art than a science. Now, I'm sure some clever scientists will and have already figured out ways to measure slope in degrees and whatever, but not all greens are going to be the same pace. So it is very much, there's a bit of guesswork involved, but it's an educated guess. So the better you can understand how the topography that the green is going to influence the pace, and again, the things that will influence that will be slope, distance, and green speed. Is the grass long? Is it short? Is it into the grain? Is it down grain? Is it across the grain? We don't have so much grain in this country, but I know that in certain parts of the world, grain plays a big influence. And obviously, hitting the ball out the middle of the putter will influence how far the ball travels as well. And we all know we're supposed to hit out the middle, but when was the last time anyone actually paid any attention to that? That's a real skill, and that is one of the real skills that allows you to gain some control or influence over the pace of the putt. But I think just the whole concept of knowing that pace will very much influence or dictate the line is the best place to start. And again, going back to one of the things we talked about earlier, that if ordinarily we choose a line, then we decide how hard we're going to hit it, that's not very effective or efficient, then it might be wise to try something else, to flip that on its head and think about how hard you're going to hit it before you then choose a line, which is pretty much what we do with every other shot. You know, if it's a pitch shot or a 7-iron, a 6-iron, or a 9-iron, whatever it is, into a green, we need to, we have decided how much force we're going to apply. Because the first thing you want to do, when you hit your ball into the fairway, what's the first thing you do? You find out how far you've got to the front of the green and or to the flag. But it's almost like, so from the tee to the front of the green, it's all about distance. But then as soon as we break that barrier, we cross the barrier from fairway onto green, our attention shifts from distance to direction. Because the line's perhaps a bit more tangible than pace. Line's a bit more obvious than pace. It's perhaps a bit easier to see. It's quite difficult to visualize pace until or unless you go back to what Karl mentioned earlier, when that line becomes liquid or fluid. So if you're pouring liquid into the hole, it's not going in so fast that it's going to overflow in a second, or it's actually going to run right over the top, but it is going to flow fast enough to get into the hole. So if you were standing on a green that had a slope and you were pouring water or some other liquid onto the green that's going to reach the hole, you would soon know how much to tip over the jug in order to let the liquid onto the surface so it's going to reach the hole at the appropriate time. Your brain and our brains and bodies are a lot smarter than we give them credit for a lot of the time.
So a number of episodes back, a couple months ago, we had Tim Tucker on the podcast. And the following week, Tim went on to carry the bag for Kit Kitayama, who won on the tour. And one of the things that really jumped out to me with Tim was, and something that I've done for a long time, so I love having this confirmation of it, is when we get out to the fairway, when our ball lands, we pull out our rangefinder and we try to determine the length of what it is to the middle, front, or directly to the pin. But once we get on the green, we don't figure out what the distance is. We just eyeball it, right? And he's a huge advocate of pacing off your putts, right? And then to me, that helps me determine what my body has to do. And I'm going back to, what do you do to determine the pace? And that's a physical thing on not just a visual or, a calculation. It's a physical thing, how we determine pace. Do you advocate to pace them off, to walk off the putts, get your distance every time?
Well, it's funny, we do an exercise. We've done this in schools and clinics and classes for a few years now, where we ask someone to look at their putt from down the line. So they stand behind the ball, and we ask them to turn their putter upside down so they hold the head in their hands and use the putter like a walking stick. And we ask them to close their eyes and walk to where they think the hole is and tap the green to see how close they get to it. How many times have we seen people walk past the hole?
It's very rare that happens, and it's usually the guy who's a good putter who does walk past the hole, who manages to get it up there.
Yeah. So most people underestimate the distance because looking down the line foreshortens everything. So that's why we advocate going to the low side to get a better slopes and the distance. Because without knowing the distance, and if it's uphill or downhill, we can't possibly know how hard to hit the putt. And if we don't know how hard we're going to hit it, how can we choose a line? Right. Again, if that works for you, Fred, please keep doing it.
Well, this podcast's all about me, so.
Yep.
And another thing that I found to be very interesting, this is years ago, this is from Jeff Mangum, who's also another putting instructor, is to visualize, now we're back to the visualization part, of the speed that the ball would drop into the hole, what it gets to, but then go backwards. And then take it all the way back to the putter. And as soon as you bring your attention right back to the putter, then follow through with the stroke and get it to the pace that you just saw it leaving the putter. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, that was something out of the hole as well as going in, because it's not going to come out like a rocket.
Right.
And it's not going to come out just to creep up to the top of the hole and find its way back onto the green. It's going to come out with the right pace. Or the appropriate pace.
It was something apparently Jack Nicklaus used to do. He used to actually see the ball go into the hole, then come back out of the hole, and that would create a really rich representation of what the task does. But we keep sort of coming back round to this principle of play around with the imagery, play around with what goes in your head before you actually create the putt. But the other thing I would say as well, Fred, is that in people's training, how much time do people actually pay attention to improving their pace when they're working on the putting? You'll see a lot of time, a lot of attention trying to get the stroke right, which again, as we say, has its part to play, but spend a little bit more time engaging and giving your brain tasks to improve pace control. Go on to the putting green. One we love doing this one is go on the green. It's the only time we'd recommend you do it, is go on the green with 4 balls and see if you can complete this task from 10, 15, 20 feet. With the first ball, see if you can roll it just past the hole. With the second ball, see if you can leave it to the right of the hole. Third ball, leave it to the left of the hole. And the fourth ball, leave it short of the hole. So you're engaging the brain to actually increase feel, this elusive thing called feel. You're training it in a way by not just trying to get it right all the time, but moving either side of correct. So it's a wonderful, wonderful exercise, that.
I like that one a lot. I like it a lot. Karl, tell us more about your podcast.
Yeah, the Brain Booster. It comes out every Friday. Fred, we've had some pretty good guests on there over the years. We need to get you on as a guest, telling your life story. That will be the next one that we do.
No, we're not.
the evolution of a podcast. But yeah, it comes out every Friday, the Brain Booster.
Excellent. And Gary, now tell us about this digital program on the lost art of putting. How do we get access to it?
Yes, it's really, we created it as a kind of a digital or visual companion to the book, The Lost Art of Putting, which, as we said, earlier on, it's been out for 5 years now. We've had some amazing feedback from all around the world, from golfers of all standards, from everyone, from beginners to tour pros to whatever, and it's been great. And it's been a real joy to do. So we created this digital companion, if you like, to, as we mentioned earlier, to help perhaps bring some of the dryness that you can get from reading a book and bring it to add some color to it, if you like, add a bit more depth to it. So it is now out and available at either themindfactor.com or performanceprinciples.co.uk. And we have created a special offer for your listeners.
You're kidding.
So if they go onto either of these websites and they key in the coupon code, which is TLA20, TLA20, you get 20% discount.
TLA?
The Lost Art, TLA 20
is a coupon code.
Yeah, so your listeners get a 20% discount.
That's very kind. Thank you. That's very generous. I appreciate it. Well, I'll tell you, I enjoyed the book thoroughly 5 years ago and learned a lot from it. But the video is a very powerful companion and very helpful. And I just want to thank you both for putting that out there and being so comfortable on camera, because you made it easy to watch, both of you. I was just amazed at how comfortable you were and easy, just flowing, talking, not making any, gaffes or going in the middle of a sentence. You both did an amazing job, and this was really helpful as special today. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having us on again.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Very much appreciated.
Again, if you'd like access to their video of The Lost Art of Putting, go to mindfactor.com. Use the coupon code TLA20 for 20% off. And also, the book is excellent, as are these guys. I really appreciate their time together, considering they're in the UK and I'm here in CA, California. So, episode 904, a couple weeks ago, featuring John Erickson, has really taught me a lot about social media, strangely enough. We created a short video from the episode where John was talking about why golf courses don't need to be made longer, and it's kind of gone viral on Instagram and Facebook with over 30,000 views in 3 days. That's pretty huge for me. But the comments that people are making, especially those who have no idea of John or who he is and what he's done in the game, are frankly nasty. I mean, there's some pretty ugly things being said, but I guess that's how social media works, and that's what being controversial does. Not my style, but so be it. As I always tell people who don't like an episode, hey, stay tuned to next week, because we'll have something completely different and a different perspective on the game. Thanks to good old boy Ed Patterson of Rockport, Texas, for becoming our latest Golf Smarter ambassador. Ed got a free copy of Tony Manzoni's video of The Lost Fundamental as our way of saying thank you for listening and participating in the show. How would you like to be one of our ambassadors and receive a free gift for your effort? To receive that free gift, either write a review of our podcast from wherever you subscribe, or just introduce a new episode by sharing where you're from and where you play, just like Ed did. In addition to Tony's video, the other gifts you can choose from are a box of Odin X1 balls with the Golf Smarter logo, or a glove and glove storage compartment from redroostergolf.com. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes and today's blog post so that you can learn more about these two fabulous partners and what they have to offer. So send me an email and I'll get back to you with some instructions of what to do and what to say. Just write to Golf Smarter Podcast at gmail.com or visit golfsmarter.com and click on the Hey Fred button. And hey, join the controversy. Follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Golf Smarter to see our ongoing posts of videos and articles, because we're putting up new content like 5 times a week. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for upcoming episodes, please click on that Hey Fred button when you visit golfsmarter.com.